Over 3 full 24-hour days of YouTube watching, 5 years of university education, and countless hours of articles, blogs, podcasts, and Twitter conversations consumed about note-taking, from large creators to small creators, thought leaders to everyday practitioners, covering biology, chemistry, math, and medical students, to business, project managers, CEOs, and everyday workers, to farmers, religious speakers, and so many other people using different techniques, methods, and tools. I thought I would summarize most of the key points in this video. Number 1, know the purpose of taking notes. Number 2, understand the journey of the notes you're taking. And number 3, sorting out the note-taking logistics. So number 1, the purpose of taking notes. There were 4 main reasons that came up as to why you take notes. The first one being regurgitation of information. Then taking notes for understanding, fear of forgetting information, and then action-focused notes. The purpose of regurgitation of information was usually by students for tests or essays or exams. The notes and information weren't really going to last that long because the purpose of notes were for the test or exam, so once that test or exam was done, the notes are sort of just disregarded or forgotten about. This sort of note-taking was common in fact-heavy topics like math, science, or history, focusing on numbers, dates, patterns, and focusing on the conclusions of the topic. The goal of this note-taking is to remember information for a specific time so that it can be regurgitated to the specifications required by the examiners or assessors. This means this sort of note-taking doesn't really lead to much sustained expertise, as learning expertise takes action over a long period of time. Moving us to taking notes for understanding, which is more about the interpretation of the information that you're actually consuming, looking at more concept-heavy topics like life, business, or philosophy. Understanding does require effort though, so explaining these notes in plain language so that when you're reviewing notes later on, it's much easier. These sort of notes are expected to last over a long period of time for reference in future, for reminders, revision, or for expanding on when learning more about the concepts and sometimes facts and figures. The goal of this note-taking is to formulate an informed opinion and understanding using references to support your point of view with the ability to diverge ideas in the future. Some notes are taken out of fear, and with the abundance of information out there, our levels of consumption are very, very high, but not all information is necessary, a reminder I have to tell myself. Avoiding overconsumption is a real thing, and Mark Manson has spoken about the attention diet. Just like you would with food, you pay attention to how many calories you consume, you'd pay attention to how much stuff you're consuming. But the fear of forgetting information or the fear of missing out can lead to a note-taking backlog. Now, this isn't an issue as long as your expectations are realistic with what you want to do with all the notes. If you want everything processed but consume more than you can process, then the backlog could cause unwanted stress. And then there is action-focused note-taking, so the purpose of the note is to take a specific action to be done after the meeting, lecture, lesson, whatever it is. Maybe it's a follow-up meeting, an email, or data or numbers, results that you need to send off to someone. Maybe it's homework or a question you want to study later on. So the purpose of taking notes will change, and understanding the purpose of the note that you're actually taking will help your understanding in the journey that note is going to take. Most notes go through 3 different stages: a capture note, a process note, and a working note. When you're consuming information, whether that's from a meeting, a lecture, whatever, you will be creating a capture note. If the purpose was around regurgitation, maybe there's lots of questions and answers in that capture note. If the purpose was around understanding, questions but expanding questions for exploration are likely to be used alongside summary points and other things depending on the method being used, but I'll cover that in step 3. If the purpose was around fear of forgetting information, most of the time the note is just going to be very bare bones with maybe some metadata for searching later on. And if the purpose of the note was around action, then it's likely to be at the front of mind, highlighted in a really bold color, just so that you can see it straight away. So once you have the capture note, that could be the end of the note's journey and it doesn't go to process and working, because those actions in the note could be put into a task management system. Or maybe if it's taken for fear of forgetting information, that's the capture note and you just archive it and store it somewhere just in case you want to use it at another point. But some notes do require a little bit of processing. The questions and answers need cleaning up. They need to be explained better or put into some sort of system for revision, like flashcards, or whatever method is being used to learn that information. And other notes will be processed potentially a few times using progressive summarization or something similar, where you go over the capture note and take out the highlightable points for exploration and/or addition later on. Some notes then continue the journey into working notes, which include ideas and concepts that can develop and evolve over time. These notes are often taken for the purpose of understanding, and as an idea only dies if you let it, working notes are the formulated opinions or the interpretations and explorations around a specific topic or highlighted point from the capture note. And they can expand in many directions, contributing to what could be referred to as a second brain, contributing to your personal knowledge bank. But each note will stop at a different point along this journey, so sorting out the logistics of that note-taking then becomes the question, and this is where all of us like to live. The formatting of notes, picking a note capture tool, and note-taking method are all massive conversations that exist in the world of personal knowledge management. No matter what note-taking method tool is used, highlightable points will appear, and the difference is how those highlightable points are identified. Using highlighters are obvious, but the flow note-taking method suggests arrows, lines, boxes, and colours. The Morse code note-taking method suggesting dots, dashes, and symbols. The outline note-taking method suggesting subheadings, subsections, and indents. The traditional vertical note-taking method suggesting paragraphs or sentences, like the sentence note-taking method. The split page note-taking method, and the Cornell note-taking method. But the Cornell note-taking method also suggesting multiple columns. And of course, there are preferences inside each of these note-taking methods with some mixing and matching going on. Some people prefer simple, minimalistic notes. Others, much more aesthetic notes with images, highlighted colours, calligraphy all over the page. And some people change the format of the note depending on the stage of the journey it is in. But everyone agrees the note, no matter what format, what method, what stage it is in, it needs to be comprehensible now and in the future. Picking a capture tool used to be simple, pen and paper. Now in the digital world, it's great fun. Some use a digital capture tool for the tech features like exports, backups, shortcuts, linking, copy and paste, easy aesthetics, but using tech means refraining from certain distractions. Some people use a more analog handwriting capture tool for a slower capture experience, potentially helping understanding, but that is individualized and context matters. It is also easier with handwriting tools for some symbol and image work alongside visual representations often used in the charting note-taking method, the mind map note-taking method, and the flow method in topics like math or science that have lots of symbols and things that don't fit on a traditional desktop line. But with both of these options, there are rabbit holes you can go down. Digital, what app to use, what device to use, where to save things. And then with analog, how many pens, highlighters, and pencils do you need, what quality to use, and where to store all that paper. And again, the consensus here is that as long as the notes are comprehensible, findable, searchable, and they capture everything that you need, everything else is just personal preference. Now, the note-taking method to use, again, is personal preference and often seems to impact the format of notes and the capture tools used, as some methods need certain features, but the purpose of taking notes and the journey of each note will play a massive role. The consensus around which note-taking method to pick is literally to take a bit of everything. Use columns, use indents, colours, symbols, lines, paragraphs, sections, arrows, diagrams, just to get the point down that suits the journey it will go on. as my headline atomic note states, note-taking is complicated. But understanding these 3 steps will get you started, moving, or in my case, clear up what I'm actually doing with all this information I'm consuming. If you want to hear more about my personal preferences with all of these stages, I will be doing videos coming up in the future going over each of these stages so you can take notes on those when they happen. So until that next video, get off YouTube and do something productive with your time instead.